take you to eThekwini, Durban. We know that this COVID-19 pandemic has also exposed corruption, fraud, and you thought when there's a disease, people will behave, but it looks like greed knows no boundaries. Desmond Tatia, good afternoon. PPE tender corruption has been in the headline. I mean, during a pandemic, one would thought stealing would stop.
I guess it never really does stop, Prat, and I missed some of your question, but I caught the important bits. The pandemic didn't stop anyone. In fact, what it did was it presented an opportunity for criminals, not just here in KwaZulu-Natal, but across the country as well, because suddenly there was now a budget to allow for the procurement of essential PPE that was needed in the fight against COVID-19. I mean, this was needed by healthcare workers, this was needed by ordinary citizens in government facilities and the like, but there were those that were inflating prices. There were tenders that had gone out at ridiculous amounts. I mean, here in KwaZulu-Natal, we had what is now well known as the blanket scandal. Yes, credit has to be given to the provincial government in some instances because they acted, but the question is what happens to all of the money that has gone down the drain. Now, joining me in this conversation is Viswan Reddy, the leader of the African Democratic Change. I know you were just saying to me off camera that talk is cheap. So let me start with this question. What have you done? What has been your contribution to stopping corruption?
We have always remained an outside force, activists from the community, because we believe that corruption is going unabated in this country because citizens are allowing it to happen. It's only when ordinary people stand up and say enough is enough, that we've had enough and that we need action, and we need those that are responsible and those ministers and MECs and others who oversee these key departments. We want to see them locked up and put in jail. We don't want to see commissions, expensive commissions like the Zondo Commission, and we see no arrests, that we want less talk and more action. Then the government will start taking heed to what we're saying. We've exposed corruption wherever we've seen it. In fact, as an organization, as African Democratic Change, our activists have been at the forefront of exposing corruption. Let's understand what happened here through the PPE scandal. The lifeblood of thousands of people was taken away. Doctors died, nurses died, and I've made the statement, and I was attacked by the MEC of Health here in KZN for saying it, that because of corruption, they had insufficient PPEs for their frontline staff, for their workers. I mean, I had potential tenderers. People showed me a tender that they had from the department, where the department was paying 26 Rand for a mask, and the cost of that mask was only 6 Rand. For that 26 Rand, they could have got 4 masks, but here they were only getting 1.
And this became a cash cow. This just presented an opportunity.
That's exactly what happened. So people have gotten rich out of this at the expense of the lives of people. But Dasan, corruption is endemic in South Africa. And the reason why it's happening that way is because there's no examples that's being set. As ADEC, we are saying we want to see the politicians who are responsible for oversight in these departments. We want them arrested, like happens in Singapore.
But let's talk about the mechanisms, because they shouldn't even get there. It shouldn't be a case of getting to a point where politicians have to be removed. It shouldn't actually happen.
There should be no, in fact, that you're quite right. There should be sufficient checks and balances in the system to prevent corruption from taking place. Now, if you look at PPEs, there were thousands of people that died. The blood of those people that died is in the hands of those that were responsible. That official down there who was making a quick buck out of this tender system, he was doing it because he can see his leaders, he can see the ministers and those that are higher up living a fancy life, extravagant life. He reads about all the corruption they are involved in, and he sees them getting away with it. So what's wrong with him putting his hand inside the cookie jar as well? So we are setting a very bad precedent in the country, and unless this is stopped, there's going to be massive problems for us in the future. That corruption is not only PPEs. Your cost of water, electricity is exorbitant in this country because of corruption. The price of fuel in this country, we are paying. Citizens in this country are paying for corruption. Unfortunately, this is going to continue unless the people stand up and say, we've had enough.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Frisman Reddy. And I think, Pradan, to illustrate that point of the desperation of those criminals that have made off with millions, I think can be illustrated in the point that we saw recently where in Mpumalanga there was the allegation that one of those that was implicated was actually attempting to bribe the investigators to get out of that case. And the desperation in protecting their interests seems to be growing.
Thank you very much. Dasen Tata there in Durban.